My name is Harper Collins. I'm 36 years old, and 3 weeks ago, I learned something that shattered a part of me I didn't even know was still holding on. My father passed away after a long battle with congestive heart failure, and when the obituary was published on our local town website, I searched for my name the way a child looks for herself in a school picture. I expected to see it right there next to my brother's, listed as his loving daughter. Instead, I saw nothing, not a single mention. It read only, "He is survived by his devoted son, Michael Collins." I stared at the screen for so long that the brightness started blurring my vision. At first, I thought it was a typo, something someone posted too quickly and would correct later. But then I saw it again in the printed version shared by the funeral home, and I realized it wasn't an oversight. I was intentionally erased. It was like watching someone rewrite history with the clear intention of proving I never mattered. The most painful part wasn't even the omission. It was knowing that my father, Benjamin Collins, wasn't just anybody. He wasn't a distant, unknown figure. He was a retired firefighter, a decorated hometown hero, a man whose name was respected in Chattanooga, Tennessee. People knew him as courageous, honorable, the kind of man who would run into burning buildings when others ran out. I grew up hearing people call him a savior, a protector, a man made of loyalty and strength. Yet somewhere between being a hero to strangers and a father behind closed doors, he decided I wasn't part of his final truth. I sat at the dining table with my laptop still open, trying to steady my breathing. My 8-year-old son, Eli, who had been working on coloring pages nearby, looked up and asked, "Mom, why are you shaking?" I didn't even realize my hands were trembling until he pointed it out. I closed the laptop gently, not wanting him to see my humiliation. But Eli isn't the kind of child who misses things. He pays attention in ways most adults don't. I said, "Something unexpected happened, sweetheart. I'm okay." He studied me with those deep, thoughtful brown eyes he inherited from my mother, Linda Collins, the woman whose absence changed everything. Linda died when I was 13, and from that moment on, our family stopped being a family. The warmth, the laughter, the late-night cocoa, the affectionate touches, all disappeared. My father shut down emotionally, and my older brother, Michael, quickly stepped into the role of the perfect son, the future man of the house. I, however, became the quiet reminder of the woman he lost. For years, I convinced myself we were just an emotionally distant family, not a broken one. When I left for college and chose to major in English education instead of following a career path my father respected, the distance turned into a permanent wall. But even when our relationship became strained, I always believed that no matter how complicated things were, I was still his daughter. A few hours after seeing the obituary, I received another blow. The estate attorney emailed both Michael and me, clarifying that my father had left everything to my brother. Not some things, not shared portions, but everything. The property, the pension savings, and the house I grew up in. The same house where I painted my bedroom walls yellow with my mother because she said it would keep the sunshine inside even when it rains. It felt like my whole life had been reduced to a footnote that didn't even make the final draft. While I sat there trying to process what kind of person I had been to deserve such exclusion, Eli slid his chair closer and put his small hand over mine. He said in a soft but fiercely protective tone, "Mom, you didn't do anything wrong. Grown-ups forget things when they're sad or confused. You taught me that." I wanted to believe him, but this wasn't forgetfulness. This was erasure with intention. That night, as I tucked Eli into bed, he whispered, "We're still going to the memorial, right?" I hesitated, then answered, "Yes, because pain doesn't take away truth, and silence won't be the last thing we give back." I didn't know it yet, but Eli already held the key to a message that would turn every lie inside out. In the days leading up to the memorial, my emotions shifted between anger, confusion, and a strange sense of numb acceptance. I wasn't surprised that Michael would make arrangements without me. He had been the self-appointed spokesperson for the family since we were teenagers, but I never imagined he would erase me from the story altogether. For most people, funerals are painful because they represent final goodbyes. For me, the pain came from realizing that my goodbye had apparently already happened years before he died, and I just didn't know it. I tried to maintain normal routines for Eli's sake. I still packed his lunch for school, helped him with spelling homework, and sat with him at the kitchen table while he ate dinner. But even during those quiet moments, I felt like someone had ripped a page out of my life and replaced it with a blank space no one wanted to explain. The worst part was that I didn't even know what my father's final thoughts were about me. Did he hate me? Was he disappointed? Had he convinced himself I simply didn't belong? On Thursday evening, 3 days before the memorial, I finally told Eli what had happened. I didn't want him to find out through whispers or relatives, and he deserved honesty. We were sitting on the couch, wrapped in a blanket because our old heater made the living room colder than it should be. I took a deep breath and said, "Eli, there's something you should know before we go to Grandpa's memorial. My name wasn't included in the announcement, and I wasn't mentioned as his daughter." He stared at me with a puzzled look. "But you are, his daughter. Everyone knows that. Why would he leave you out?" "I don't know," I admitted, fighting tears I was no longer strong enough to swallow. Sometimes adults make decisions they don't explain, even when they hurt other people. He thought for a long moment, then asked something I wasn't prepared for. "Do you still love him?" That question hit harder than anything else. I didn't have a simple answer. I still remembered my father carrying me on his shoulders at county fairs, teaching me to ride a bike, lifting me onto the kitchen counter while my mom baked cookies. Love existed once. It had history. So I responded truthfully. I love who he was when he was healthy, when Mom was alive, and when we were still a family. Eli nodded like someone far older than 8 and said, "That means it mattered." The next morning, I stood in front of my closet, staring at clothes that suddenly felt symbolic. I didn't want to appear weak or bitter, but I also refused to dress like I was there to play along with a version of the past that excluded me. I chose a simple black wrap dress. Nothing flashy, nothing dramatic. Eli picked a white button-down shirt, charcoal pants, and his small suit jacket. When he looked at himself in the mirror, he said, "Mom, we're going to honor him even if they don't honor you." On the drive to the community chapel, we passed familiar places. The ice cream parlor my dad used to take us to on summer nights, the park where Michael and I raced bicycles, and the grocery store where Mom once laughed so hard she dropped a whole bag of oranges. These memories didn't hurt. They ached, like touching a bruise you can't help but press. When we arrived, the parking lot was already full. I noticed faces I hadn't seen in years. Neighbors, coworkers, retirees who remembered my father as a hero. As I stepped out of the car, a woman my father once worked with approached us, smiling kindly. "You must be Eli," she said, kneeling to shake his hand. "Your grandfather talked about you all the time." That sentence stopped me cold. He talked about Eli all the time? Did he talk about me? Or did I become a story too painful to acknowledge? Inside the chapel, framed photos lined a long table. They showed my father as a proud firefighter, a young husband, and a proud father, at least to one child. Every picture with a child featured Michael. It wasn't just omission anymore, it was curation. Michael finally approached with polite, stiff body language. "I'm glad you came, Harper," he said. "Let's try to keep things respectful today." I looked him dead in the eye and replied, "Respect starts with honesty." As I took my seat near the back, Eli sat beside me and whispered, "It's okay, Mom. The truth always finds a way." He had no idea how right he would be. The memorial service began with soft instrumental music playing through ceiling speakers, the kind meant to make people feel reflective and serene. But serenity was the last thing I felt. My chest felt tight, like a rubber band stretched too far and seconds away from snapping. Rows of people filled the chapel, some dabbing their eyes with tissues, others whispering memories as if they were sharing secret treasures. I sat in the far right row with Eli, trying to blend in, even though my heart felt like it was sitting on the open floor for anyone to step on. Michael stood at the front with polished confidence, wearing an expensive charcoal suit and a firefighter badge pinned to his lapel. I knew he did it intentionally, to appear like he was carrying Dad's torch. When he finally approached the podium, people straightened up as though a second version of my father was about to speak. He cleared his throat and began. "Thank you all for coming to honor my father, Benjamin Collins. He was a man of bravery, sacrifice, and purpose. He taught me what it means to lead, to protect, and to make hard decisions when others won't. I felt Eli gently slide his small hand into mine. He didn't have to look at me. He sensed every emotion radiating out of me, like heat. As Michael continued, he shared stories, ones that conveniently involved only him: fishing trips, firefighter training advice, college move-in day, holiday speeches, all memories centered on an image where he stood proudly next to Dad while I simply didn't exist. Every absence felt like a knife pushed deeper, not twisted in rage, but slowly, precisely, like someone who believed pain was easier to digest in thin slices rather than one brutal stab. After he finished, the pastor invited a few close friends and relatives to speak. They all shared beautiful things, and I didn't blame them. They only knew the man he allowed them to see: a brave rescuer, a serious leader, a man committed to discipline. They never knew the version of him that locked his heart shut after Mom died, the version that punished grief instead of confronting it. When the pastor asked if anyone else would like to speak, I felt my breath hitch. Part of me wanted to walk up and say something simple and honest like, "I loved him once, and he loved me once too." But I was afraid of my voice cracking, afraid that if I spoke, someone might judge it as attention-seeking instead of truth-seeking. My legs felt glued to the chair. Then something unexpected happened. A woman named Janet, one of my mother's old friends, stood and looked directly toward me before speaking. "Ben was complicated," she said gently. "He loved his family deeply, even when he didn't know how to show it." Then her eyes softened, and she added, "And he had 2 children. 2. Her voice broke on that last word. A hush fell across the room. Michael's jaw clenched, but he forced a smile. "Thank you, Janet," he interrupted quickly, guiding her away from the microphone before she could say more. His actions were smooth but transparent, like someone adjusting picture frames so they perfectly matched the narrative he curated. During the reception portion, guests gathered near the long banquet table filled with catered food: pasta salad, sandwiches, deviled eggs, fruit platters, and store-bought cupcakes disguised as bakery quality. I wasn't hungry, but I followed Eli so he wouldn't wander alone. 2 older neighbors approached and offered polite condolences. Then one of them asked, unaware of the situation, "So what part did you play in his legacy? You must be the teacher-daughter he used to mention once, right?" I froze. The world narrowed to silence. "He mentioned me?" I asked. The woman hesitated, glancing at the man beside her. "Yes, years ago, before your mother passed. After that, well, he didn't talk much about personal family matters." Translation: he talked about me only when he was still whole. As people mingled, I overheard tiny fragments of conversations, nothing malicious, but all reflecting the same perspective. Ben's legacy continued proudly through his son. Not his children, not his family, just his son. That was when the attorney arrived, carrying a leather portfolio. I had never met him, but he greeted Michael with a handshake and said loudly enough for others nearby to hear, "We'll finalize everything as stated. The property and all remaining accounts transfer entirely under your name within the next 2 weeks." It was a public confirmation, like a stamp of ownership. Michael responded with a subtle nod, not a grateful one, but the kind a man gives when what he received aligns with what he always expected. My stomach turned, and before I even realized what was happening, I muttered, "I need air." I walked toward the hallway near the emergency exit, and Eli followed. My eyes burned with a mix of humiliation, grief, and something rising inside me that felt like injustice, finally waking up after years of being sedated. That was when Eli spoke softly yet confidently. "Mom, Grandpa didn't forget you. I know it." I wiped my eyes and whispered, "Why are you so sure?" He looked up at me with a calmness no 8-year-old should possess. "Because he told me something I didn't understand at first, but I think today is the day." When Eli said he believed my father hadn't forgotten me, his tone wasn't hopeful or speculative. It was steady, like a person making a factual statement they already accepted as truth. I knelt down to his eye level, still holding on to the last fragments of composure I had left. "Eli, sweetheart, why would you think that?" I asked gently. He reached into the inner pocket of his small black suit jacket and pulled out a small, carved wooden box that I had never seen before. The box was no bigger than the size of my hand, dark walnut with a brass hinge, worn slightly on the edges as though it had been handled with care and years of meaning. Engraved on the top were the initials BC, my father's. My breath caught. "Where did you get that?" I asked, barely above a whisper. He hesitated, glancing around to ensure no one else was close enough to overhear. "Grandpa gave it to me," he said, "a week before he died, when Uncle Michael told you not to come because it would make things stressful. I was visiting him with Uncle Michael, and Grandpa asked him to wait outside. He handed me this box and said, 'You must protect it until the right moment.' He told me I would know when that moment was." I stared at my son in stunned silence, feeling both disbelief and a crashing rush of validation. A box, a secret message, a final intentional act. Yet none of it matched the man the world believed had willingly erased me. Had I misunderstood him all these years, or had I underestimated how deeply he struggled to express remorse? "Why didn't you tell me before?" I asked. Eli's voice lowered as he answered, "Because he said I had to wait until they tried to erase you. Today was the first time I realized they really did." Every part of me shook, not with sadness now, but with purpose. The service was shifting from the chapel into the fellowship hall for the memorial slideshow. People were gathering around a large projector, and Michael was preparing to narrate a highlight reel of my father's life. He had full control of the event, the photos, the speech, the narrative, and now apparently, my father's legacy. Eli held the box against his chest like it was fragile and sacred. He looked at me with a clarity beyond his years and said, "Mom, Grandpa wanted you to be seen. We can't hide this." I took a deep breath, realizing that this was no longer about feelings. It was about truth, and truth was not something that needed permission. We walked back inside, my heart pounding so loudly I could feel the vibration in my throat. The lights dimmed as the slideshow began. Photos flashed across the screen. My father rescuing people from burning buildings, shaking hands at award ceremonies, smiling at Michael's baseball games, toasting at his graduation, hugging him at the firehouse celebration. Then came a series of family holiday photos. Thanksgiving, Christmas, beach trips, all featuring my father and Michael. Not even a corner of my hair, not a cropped elbow, not a blurry silhouette in the background. I had been edited out of my own existence. A murmur spread across the room. People were noticing the omission. Some whispered, some raised eyebrows. One person even asked, "Didn't he have a daughter?" My pulse sharpened. That was the moment, and Eli felt it before I did. He stepped away from me, squared his small shoulders, and walked toward the front of the room like someone who had trained for this his entire life. He stopped right beside Michael, who was still facing the crowd with proud authority. Eli didn't hesitate, didn't stutter, didn't tremble. His voice rang out clear as a bell. "Excuse me, everyone. Before this ends, there's something you all need to hear. Grandpa asked me to show it if anyone ever erased my mom." The room turned still and quiet. Michael spun toward him, his face tightening in alarm. "Eli, what are you doing? This isn't the time." But Eli didn't back down. "It's exactly the time," he replied firmly. He lifted the wooden box high enough for everyone to see. "This has something Grandpa left for my mom. He said it mattered more than anything." The audience was frozen. All eyes shifted from the box to me, and for the first time that day, I did not feel erased. Would you like Section 5, 700 words now, the full dramatic reveal and emotional transformation moment? You said, yes, expand Section 5 and do it in 700 words. ChatGPT said, below is Section 5 fully expanded to approximately 700 words, written with emotional intensity, cinematic pacing, realistic dialogue, authentic American tone, and a deeply satisfying dramatic reveal. Section 5, the climax 700 words. The room fell so quiet that even the soft hum of the projector seemed loud. All eyes were on Eli, who stood with the wooden box held carefully in both hands. He looked impossibly small beside the podium, yet his presence commanded more respect than anyone else in the room. Michael stepped closer, lowering his voice but unable to hide the panic on his face. "Eli, give that to me. This isn't a game," he whispered sharply. Before I could say a word, Eli instinctively pulled the box closer to his chest and said loudly, "My grandpa trusted me, not you. He said adults forget what matters when they're angry or scared, but kids remember." Gasps rippled through the audience. A few people leaned forward with curiosity, others with confusion, and some with an uneasiness that suggested they already suspected there was more to the family story than they had been told. The pastor, sensing that this moment was bigger than decorum, stepped forward and gently asked, "Harper, would you like to come up here with your son?" I walked to the front slowly, my heart racing so fast it felt like it might burst. When I reached Eli, I placed a hand on his shoulder, not to stop him, but to stand with him. "Eli," I said quietly, "are you sure you want to do this right now?" He nodded with steady conviction. "Mom, you told me once that truth doesn't need perfect timing. It just needs courage." His words hit me so deeply, I felt tears building, but I didn't let them fall. The pastor gave a respectful nod and asked, "Would you like help opening the box?" Eli shook his head and carefully lifted the lid himself. Inside, cushioned by folded tissue paper, was a navy blue USB flash drive with silver writing on it that read, "For Harper, my truth." The moment my eyes landed on those words, my knees almost gave out. The pastor immediately recognized the significance. "Does anyone here have a computer we can connect it to?" A man from the back raised his hand and said, "There's a laptop hooked to the projector for the slideshow." He hurried forward and placed it on a small table near the podium. Michael moved quickly, positioning himself in front of the laptop as if guarding it. "This isn't verified," he said, voice rising. "Anybody can write anything on a USB. We're not playing personal drama in a memorial." Before he could continue, one of my father's closest firefighter colleagues, Captain Harris, stood up and said, "If that's Benjamin's handwriting and he left it for his daughter, then we owe it to him to listen." Others chimed in with agreements. The pressure shifted hard and fast, and Michael knew it. Seeing there was no escape, Michael backed away reluctantly. Eli placed the USB into the laptop port, and the projector screen flickered from slideshow mode to a video file titled, "Harper, Final Message." As soon as my father's face appeared, weakened, sitting upright in a hospital bed with visible oxygen tubes, several people gasped. My breath locked inside my chest. His eyes looked tired but determined, as though he knew every word mattered. He began speaking slowly, voice rough but clear. "This message is for my daughter, Harper. If you're seeing this, it means I failed to correct my wrongs while I was alive." The room froze. He continued, pausing for breath. "Harper, after your mother, Linda, died, I didn't know how to love what reminded me of her. You looked just like her, talked like her, even walked like her. I pushed you away because every time I saw you, I saw what I'd lost. I convinced myself distance would protect me. Instead, it destroyed us." My hands covered my mouth as tears finally escaped. He continued, voice breaking. "Michael took advantage of my guilt. He told me you spoke poorly of me, that you didn't care, and that you had moved on from this family. I believed him because it was easier than admitting the truth. I didn't fight for you. I let him convince me you didn't want anything from us." Around the room, shocked whispers grew louder. My father looked straight at the camera. "So I changed my will again 3 months before my death, with a private attorney who has a copy that supersedes the one Michael pushed. You are to receive half of the assets, and the family home goes to you and Eli. It was always supposed to be yours." At that moment, Michael shouted, "He was medicated. He didn't know what he was." But Captain Harris snapped, "Sit down, son." My father ended with a trembling voice. "Harper, I never stopped loving you. I just forgot how to show it. Eli, thank you for being the kind of boy your grandmother would be proud of. I'm sorry." The screen went black. Absolute silence filled the room. Not cold silence, but stunned, grieving, awakening silence. Everything had changed. Truth had spoken for itself. The room remained silent long after the video ended. No one moved, as though speaking too soon would disrespect the weight of what they had just witnessed. My father's final words hung in the air like smoke after a fire, proof of what had burned and what might still be rebuilt from the ashes. I felt Eli's hand slide gently into mine. His grip wasn't tight out of fear. It was firm with certainty. the way someone holds on to truth once it finally has a voice. The pastor cleared his throat quietly and said, "Benjamin left this world with regrets and love. Today, both were finally seen." His tone was soft, sympathetic, and honest, offering neither excuses nor judgment. People nodded, some wiping tears, others staring down, processing everything they had believed about our family. Michael, however, was not ready to surrender the story he had authored. He stood abruptly, pointing toward the laptop. "This doesn't change anything. Dad wasn't in his right mind those last few months. Everyone knows that. A video like that isn't legally binding, and I'm not losing the house over emotional theatrics." Before anyone could respond, a voice of authority cut through the tension. "That will not be your decision, Michael." A woman in a burgundy blazer stepped forward. Someone I didn't recognize at first. She introduced herself as Attorney Grace Alden, the private lawyer my father mentioned in the video. She explained that she had been present when my father recorded his statement, and she held both the updated will and notarized documentation confirming his mental clarity. She reached into her briefcase and placed a sealed envelope on the table. "This is the legal will the court will recognize," she stated, "and it names Harper and her son as beneficiaries of the family home and half of the remaining estate." Michael's posture collapsed just slightly, the first visible crack in his composure. Not rage, disbelief. His whole identity had been built on a hierarchy that just broke beneath his feet. He whispered, "He promised me. He said I earned it." Attorney Alden looked at him calmly. "He loved you. He just didn't realize how much guilt he was projecting until it was nearly too late." He turned toward me then, tears forming but quickly blinked away. For a moment I didn't see the confident golden child. I saw the boy who once sat beside me at the dining table after Mom died, both of us silent, both unsure how to live with a ghost in every room. But the moment passed quickly, and he stormed out, slamming the chapel door so hard even the ceiling bulbs rattled. Some people approached me with quiet condolences, not for my father's death, but for the years that were stolen by silence, pride, and misunderstanding. Captain Harris placed a hand on my shoulder and said, "Your father wasn't perfect, Harper, but he realized his mistakes before he died. That's more than many men can say." I nodded gratefully, though part of me wondered whether I should feel relief, anger, or grief. It felt like I was experiencing all three at once, a strange emotional intersection where pain and closure coexisted. Eli leaned against me, exhausted but peaceful. "Mom, Grandpa fixed it, didn't he asked. I brushed his hair gently. "He tried, baby, and trying matters." When we finally left the building, I paused at the exit and looked back at the photo table. There were no pictures of me there, not yet, but at least the truth had finally stepped into the room, and truth doesn't disappear once spoken. A week later, Attorney Alden met with me in her office, where she handed me the legal documents confirming the inheritance transfer. She also gave me a small envelope. On it was my name, written in my father's unmistakable, slightly slanted handwriting. Inside was a short letter, only 3 sentences. "I couldn't be the father you needed after Linda died, but I never stopped wanting to be. You were always my daughter, even when I didn't say it. Please fill the house with the love I couldn't show." I cried, not with rage, not with victimhood, but with release. Soon after, Eli and I visited the house. It looked the same from the outside, the white porch railing, the 2 maple trees forming a natural archway, the wind chime Mom hung before she passed. But stepping inside felt different. It no longer belonged to memory. It belonged to possibility. Eli explored the rooms with excitement, already imagining paint colors and where to place shelves for books and art supplies. I walked slowly through the hallway, placing my hand on the wall I once decorated with childhood drawings, realizing that love does not always arrive when we ask for it. Sometimes it arrives when it finally becomes brave. That night, I stood on the front porch with Eli beside me. Streetlights flickered on and fireflies floated across the lawn. A soft breeze passed by, lifting a strand of my hair, and for the first time in years, the air felt like it belonged to us. Eli whispered, "Mom, are we home?" A single steady tear rolled down my cheek, one of peace, not pain. "Yes," I said, "we finally are." In the end, life doesn't always give us the apologies we expect and the timing we want. Sometimes healing doesn't come from the people who hurt us, but from the truth they can no longer hide. I spent years believing I wasn't enough, not loved enough, not valued enough, not remembered enough. But what I've learned is that silence can lie, pride can destroy, and love can still exist even when it's broken. My father wasn't a perfect man. He carried regret, fear, and grief that changed him. And while I can't rewrite our past, I can choose what happens now. Today, I stand not as an erased daughter, but as a woman who survived misunderstanding, found her voice, and reclaimed her place in her own story. And as I build a life for myself and my son in the house that held every version of us, the happy moments, the painful memories, the scars, and the hope, I've decided that our future will be full of the love we once lost, because this time, nothing and no one will silence it. Thank you so much for watching this story. If it touched your heart, taught you something, or reminded you of your own hidden strength, please give this video a like. Share it with someone who needs hope. Comment your thoughts or personal experience below. And don't forget to subscribe to the channel for more powerful stories like this. Your support means more than you know.